Welcome to Shredder Fanfic. Like, subscribe, and hype video. Join members to gain early access to new videos.
The main character, after dying in his previous life, wakes up inside of Game of Thrones and he goes on the path of becoming the Pirate King. What will that do to Game of Thrones?
Flashing fiercely from the upper left to the lower right. The target was Euron's thin shoulder. Euron, short in stature, yet as agile as a ghostly octopus among the rocks, knew that a direct confrontation would be certain death. In the instant, the wooden axe whistled through the air as it approached. His left leg slid backward with lightning speed, his body tilting to the right like a reed being pulled by an invisible giant hand. The heavy wooden axe, carrying the aura of death, slammed down with a deafening crash, cracking the hard basalt rock beneath his feet and sending fragments of rock flying. Taking advantage of the slight gap in Balf's strength, Euron sprang up like a spring compressed to its limit. His short wooden sword, like a viper's tongue, stabbed towards Balf's right rib, which was wide open due to the exertion of force. The angle was tricky, and the speed was as fast as lightning. "Cunning," Balf growled, his massive body twisting with astonishing agility, his thick leather gauntlets narrowly deflecting the fatal thrust, the wooden sword scraping against the leather armor with a grating sound. Euron took a few steps back, panting, sweat mingling with the icy seawater that splashed onto him, dripping down his taut jawline. His heterochromatic eyes, his left eye like an abyss swallowing defeat, his right eye like an icy sea freezing resentment, were fixed on Balf. Dagmor stood between the two, stopping Euron from continuing his training, and said, "Your mind is as fast as lightning, young master. But your body can't keep up." Lord Balf's fighting style is for those who can withstand the first axe blow and deliver the second. If you keep training like this, your bones will break first. Power. This 5-year-old body is the greatest constraint. The barbaric path of the Balfner Iron people, the path of brute force overcoming skill, is a dead end for him. "You're right, Dagmor. I need a sword of flowing water," Euron gasped, his voice carrying the chill of the sea wind. His gaze passed over Balf and Dagmor, settling on the turbulent, narrow sea. "I've heard of the water swordsmen of Braavos. Their swords are light, agile, and all-pervasive, using technique to overcome force. Dagmor, has Mario returned to the Free Cities?" Dagmor thought for a moment and replied, "Judging by the distance, it will take at least 3 more days." Euron nodded and said, "Give Mario a task. Help me find a suitable Braavos water dancer swordsman. I think he will do his best." Combat training was only one part of Euron's life. He devoted more of his energy to exploring every inch of the unlit mists of Pike Island, scrambling for those precious exploration points. This was no leisurely stroll, but a journey fraught with challenges and dangers. Flint Cliffs, a daunting cliff on the northeastern corner of Pike Isle, are steep, black basalt pillars that seem like spears thrust into the raging, dark green sea in the fury of the drowning god. The sea wind here is compressed into a piercing shriek, the swirling salt grains whipping against the face like sandpaper. Euron refused the guard's help, carrying only a sturdy rope and specially made hooked boots. His small body pressed against the cold rock face, his fingertips digging into narrow crevices, the toes of his boots grinding into wind-eroded holes. Each upward movement was accompanied by a pounding heart and the roar of the waves from the abyss below, like the panting of a giant beast. Salt crystals seeped into his fingernails, causing excruciating pain. When he finally reached the top, the gale nearly blew him away. Standing on this tiny patch of land, seemingly at the edge of the world, looking down at the shattering waves below, a tremor of conquest and awe of the power of heaven and earth intertwined within him. The fog map in his mind instantly illuminated this perilous place, marking a hidden seabird nest, an ancient iron-born rune weathered by the wind, and the entrance to a tidal cave that had been almost hollowed out by the waves and could only accommodate one person at a time. Exploration. Discovered Flint Cliffs, earned 20 points. The Blind Lord's Ghost Tower sits on the edge of a desolate salt marshland in the heart of Pike Isle. Legend has it that centuries ago, a Greyjoy lord, blinded by his brother, was imprisoned in this isolated tower until he went mad and died. The tower is constructed of massive black stones, its surface riddled with honeycomb-like holes from years of weathering and salt erosion, resembling the rotting skeleton of a colossal beast. Inside, a thick, unbearable musty stench, the bitterness of sea salt, and an indescribable, decaying aura, as if steeped in countless despairs, permeates the air. Light streams in through narrow arrow slits, forming ghastly beams that illuminate the swirling dust, amplifying the eeriness. The wooden staircase is long since rotten. Euron, aided by Lisa, can only climb with ropes and rock spikes. The cell at the top is empty, save for walls covered in frantic scratches and dried, blackened stains resembling ancient blood. A silent wail seemed to still echo in the air. When Euron's hand traced the claw marks, the icy touch seeped straight to his bones. The system map not only illuminated this forgotten ghost tower, but also marked a very secretive, narrow cellar entrance deep within its base, sealed off by salt crystals and rubble. Exploration. Discovered the Blind Lord's Ghost Tower, gained 20 points. It was these lands, measured by footsteps, sweat, and even risk, every hidden corner of Pike City, the rugged reefs and islets of the Westeros coast, the dangerous and complex waterways of Ironman's Bay that accumulated his substantial capital. At dusk, Euron stood alone in the Eagle's Nest, the tallest tower in Pike City, having dismissed his attendants. Consciousness sank into the boundless void deep within the mind. A massive screen of light, interwoven with stars and deep blue seawater, unfolded the One Piece system. On the central map, Pike Island was displayed in exquisite detail, like a thoroughly dissected specimen. From the precipitous outline of Flint Cliffs to the hidden entrance to the secret cellar deep within the Blind Lord's Ghost Tower. From the distribution of every drying pond in the salt fields to the most concealed berth in the dockyard. Even the musty, pungent underground tunnel beneath the old main castle leading to the unknown. Large swathes of the fog over Ironwood Bay and the west coast were also dispelled, marking shipping lanes, reefs, and hiding caves. Exploration points, 42100. The number, flashing in a deep blue at the top of the screen, represents the wealth he earned through his footsteps, courage, and wisdom. All eyes were focused on the ever-spinning lottery wheel, in the center of the light screen, radiating an alluring starlight. Countless tiny fan-shaped areas were shrouded in mist, with only a few faint lights indicating possibilities. Skills, deep blue; items, emerald green; mounts, gloomy purple; and the unknown, chaotic gray. Draw a lottery. The command was calm and firm. The roulette wheel suddenly burst forth with dazzling starlight, its pointer transforming into a streak of light as it spun wildly. The misty region seemed to come alive, countless blurry runes, strange creature phantoms, and weapon outlines flashing by like fleeting glimpses in the river of fate. A sense of tension permeated the void. The hands of the clock slowed, carrying a heavy sense of destiny, skipping over the fading light, one tick at a time. Ding! A crisp beep sounded, and the pointer stopped in the area of deep blue ocean light. Congratulations on obtaining the skill, Basic Navigation. A refreshing stream of information, like a gentle sea breeze, flooded his mind. Star navigation requires calibration of the Westeros star map. Seabird tracking for land navigation, subtle ocean current perception, cloud formations foreshadowing storms, efficient boat control with wind and tides. Knowledge was imprinted on him like instinct. He felt as if he had established an invisible umbilical cord with the roaring sea beneath his feet, and the whispers of the tides echoed deep within his soul. Continue. The roulette wheel spins again, and starlight flows. Ding! The pointer stopped in the deep blue area of abstract waves and fist imprints. Congratulations on obtaining Skill Fishman Karate V1. A scorching stream of energy rose from his dantian, instantly flowing through his limbs and bones. His muscle fibers were stretched and tempered invisibly, becoming supple yet bursting with explosive power. A strange power-generating technique emerged, condensing force like compressing a wave into a single point-inch force, deflecting force like flowing water, transforming a massive impact, navigating waves and maneuvering a boat as if on flat ground. This was a technique tailor-made for him, a method of overcoming strength with softness. He instinctively threw a punch into the air, the trajectory fluid and strange, even creating a faint vortex of air. Again. The roulette wheel spun for the third time, and the light dimmed slightly. Ding! The pointer stopped on the fan-shaped area, radiating a vibrant green light. Congratulations on obtaining Item Life Card, Subcard X1. A faint light flashed, and a palm-sized black card, its texture like a tough biological membrane, appeared in his hand. Its edges were inlaid with eerie green runes. Information flooded in, drip blood into the central groove. The life mark of the main card holder, bright, life, decay, death, will appear, and the secondary card will forever point in the direction of the main card. Euron didn't hesitate to bite his fingertip, letting a drop of crimson blood seep in. The blood instantly seeped in, and the card glowed faintly, revealing a tiny yet clear grey sea monster totem composed of green stardust, brimming with life. It's a good thing, but we don't need it right now. And such a mysterious item can't be given to just anyone. Explaining its origins alone would take a lot of explaining. Yulan carefully placed it in the inner lining of his clothing. This is your last chance to win a prize. The wheel spins, its light dimming. Ding! The pointer stopped in the dark purple area of the abstract galloping horse outline. Congratulations on obtaining Mount Fararu juvenile form. The light faded, followed by a childlike, bewildered yet clear bell-like cry. Hiss. Euron looked down, and a small pony was gently nuzzling his leg with its warm nose. Smaller than a Westeros pony, it was exceptionally magnificent. Its snow-white coat flowed like velvet, and its hooves were long and powerful. Most captivating were its large eyes, deep within which burned two vibrant golden flames, full of wisdom and wildness, its mane and tail swaying gently like flowing night. Though young, its hidden nobility, speed, and power were already evident. System information: Fararu, a divine and extraordinary steed of ancient Eastern lineage. Exceptional even in its youth, it possesses unparalleled speed and stamina as an adult, and is highly intelligent, capable of telepathy. Requires special care during its growth, to be explored. The Mount of Cavendish, the popular One Piece character known as White Horse. It combines elegance and ferocity, loyally protecting its master and fearlessly brave in battle. Fararu nuzzled against Euron affectionately, his golden eyes filled with trust and curiosity. Euron gently stroked Fararu's smooth, warm neck, feeling its vibrant life force. It was a suitable pony for him now, and it would grow up alongside him. While he didn't get the devil fruit he most wanted to see, the rewards from all 4 draws were quite useful. Euron was satisfied and looked forward to an even better next time. Looking at Fararu, he felt a headache coming on. Suddenly there's a pony. How do you explain that? Oh well, whatever. Let's just say we saw it in the stable and don't know which mare gave birth to it. Now, we need to think carefully about how to create a beautiful outer packaging for Platinum Sands and then boast about it everywhere. How to use salt to open up trade routes, how to use salt to revitalize the ports, and how to use salt to control those disobedient lords. Chapter 28, Salt Gold Power. 276 AC. The salty, cold sea breeze of Ironman's Bay was now imbued with the burning scent of gold and power. Park City's docks had never been so bustling. Merchant ships from the Seven Kingdoms, and even across the narrow sea, formed a forest of masts, their sails obscuring the sky. The dull thuds of planks against the stone shore, the sailors' calls, the haggling of merchants, and the clinking of gold and silver coins mingled together to create an unprecedented symphony of wealth, uniquely Greyjoy's. The air was thick with the scents of spices, whale oil, rust, and a new, heart-pounding aroma, the scent of gold. In just 1 year, the once empty port has been completely transformed. In the vast study of the core fortress of Pike City, overlooking the bustling harbour and the deep Seastone Hall, a silent storm had long since subsided. Coron Greyjoy, the king of the Seastone, like an ancient reef retreating to the eye of the storm, personally placed the 2 heavy seals symbolizing the core of power. One a roaring sea monster surrounded by salt crystal patterns, the other a blood-stained battle axe bound with chains, on the large black stone desk. "Take it." Coron's voice was deep, carrying a complex meaning of both relieving a heavy burden and entrusting the future to someone else. His gaze, as deep as the ocean, fell on his young son across the desk. "The gift of salt, the ancient road of the sea. The future course of the Iron Islands is in your hands." Across the table stood Euron Greyjoy, only 6 years old. His deep murky green krite robes already fit him perfectly, making him appear as tall and straight as a young cedar. He didn't immediately take the 2 seals that would drive any lord mad. He merely nodded slightly, his heterochromatic eyes calm and unwavering, as if he were receiving 2 ordinary pebbles. That composure beyond his years caused the old Maester Clygon, standing in the corner, to unconsciously tighten his grip on his necklace once more, and also caused a barely perceptible glint to flash in Lisa's emerald eyes, who remained as silent as the deep sea. A year ago, when this 5-year-old boy proposed the Platinum Sands strategy amidst a storm of skepticism, no one believed him. "Give me a year and I'll give it a try." Now, with irrefutable results, he has turned all voices into submission and awe. Salt rights form the basis, and the chains are invisible. The sacred aura of Platinum Sands did not intoxicate Euron with its illusory blessings. He was as clear-headed as a blade on a reef, forging divine grace into the coldest commercial scepter and chains of rule. Any lord or merchant guild wishing to purchase Platinum Sands must first acquire several times their quota of ordinary sea salt from Pike City. The anchor of binding, this was his first ironclad rule. This ordinary sea salt, though initially processed and far superior in quality to the bitter coarse salt of other islands, remained greyish-white and inexpensive. This binding, like a heavy anchor, firmly linked buyers of Platinum Sands to Pike City's most basic and largest salt production. Earl Gilmond Portley of Salt Hill Island had attempted to resist. Owning the largest salt fields in the Iron Islands, how could he tolerate the dumping of Pike City's coarse salt? He cunningly hoarded his own coarse salt, refusing to buy Pike City's salt. The result: he not only lost his eligibility to purchase Platinum Sands, but also lost the channel to exchange Platinum Sands for gold and grain from the mainland, watching helplessly as Salt Hill Island's warehouses overflowed with unwanted bitter coarse salt, his wealth slipping through his fingers like sand. The salt workers' resentment and the land's dire straits ultimately forced him to lower his proud head. This bond ensured that Pike City's salt fields would never experience a shortage of salt, and it also tightly linked the economic lifelines of all the islands to Pike City, making them share both prosperity and adversity. The second ironclad rule was to erect a formidable price barrier. Coarse, greyish-white sea salt flowed cheaply to the commoners' stoves, and fish-curing barrels in the Iron Islands, sustaining their basic livelihoods. White gold sands, however, was crafted into a luxury item reserved only for royalty, wealthy merchants, and the Holy See. The snow-white, crystalline salt grains were packaged in specially made small crystal bottles or exquisitely carved wooden boxes, imprinted with the emblem of the drowned god and the kraken of Greyjay. Each grain seemed to embody divine grace and the essence of the sea. Euron intended to make white gold sands a luxury item, something unaffordable only for the noble and wealthy. Price: 10 times that of coarse salt is just the starting point. In King's Landing, in Old Town, in Bravos, a small bottle of white gold sand is worth its weight in silver. This is blatant plundering of wealth, exploiting the aura of faith and absolute quality monopoly to extract astonishing profits from the tables of the nobles of the Seven Kingdoms, from the treasuries of the Prince of Dawn, and from the ledgers of the Iron Bank of Bravos. Gold flows like a tame tide, ceaselessly into the treasuries of Pike. Subsequently, Euron seized the opportunity to establish the Ice and Fire Merchant Guild, whose tentacles had quietly extended to the major ports on both sides of the narrow sea, announcing to all potential buyers, "Want to buy the Iron Islands, white gold sands? You can, but you must also buy salt produced in the Iron Islands. Whether it's the gifted salt of Pike City or coarse salt from other islands, as long as it comes from the Iron Islands. Any attempt to purchase salt from other sources to replace iron salt, once discovered, will result in permanent disqualification from purchasing white gold sands. Monopoly is the key to setting prices, and that's the most profitable method. This is Euron's third ironclad rule, the blade of monopoly. These 3 directives, like a sword of Damocles hanging over their heads, forced all merchants and lords coveting white gold sands to fix their purchasing focus firmly on the Iron Islands. This not only solidified Pike City's absolute pricing power over iron salt, but also tied the entire island's salt production to Greyjay's cause, greatly increasing the bargaining power and overall value of all iron salt. Even the coarse salt from Salt Hill Island, simply because it was from the Iron Islands, saw its price soar. Earl Gilmond, though filled with mixed feelings, undeniably received a share of the profits, and his will to resist quietly melted away in the face of real money. Ancient Path knew power, sharp blade in hand. Euron wielded another power granted by King Corran, the allocation of plundering rights under the new regulations of the ancient roads, with the precision of a surgeon's scalpel. He divided the new regulations of the ancient roads into different levels of sea areas and routes, issuing plundering licenses of varying values based on each island's loyalty, contributions, especially the enforcement of salt taxes and kidnapping policies, and passed discipline in plundering, strictly prohibiting contact with ships from the Seven Kingdoms. Loyal islands that made significant contributions, such as Dunstan Drogo of Great Wake Island, which was closely allied with the island through marriage and salt quotas, often received the golden route, leading to merchant ships or slave-trading fleets laden with spices and silk. Those that wavered and failed to comply, such as Balon of Kurashio Island, which had once outwardly complied but inwardly resisted, might only receive high-risk, low-profit marginal routes or even be relegated to harassing impoverished fishing villages. The allocation of licenses was done through Euron, because only he knew all the route information transmitted by his spies. This information acts like invisible reins, directing the Iron Islands' plundering forces and transforming their destructive power into tools for targeted wealth acquisition, firmly serving Pike City's overall strategy. A percentage of the loot must be handed over to Pike City as management fees, while the Ice and Fire Merchant Guild becomes the largest conduit for selling stolen goods and resupplying them, collecting money on one hand and selling goods on the other, thus controlling the flow of black gold. A song of ice and fire, a symphony of black and white. The banner of the Ice and Fire Guild features a sea monster formed of ice on one side and a battle axe wreathed in flames on the other, making them a new force that has attracted attention on both sides of the narrow sea. On the surface, it operated a legitimate business, transporting salt, especially bundled common salt, ironware, and salted fish from the Iron Islands to the mainland in exchange for grain, timber, cloth, and luxury goods, then transporting mainland goods back to the islands for distribution. Its true profit-making core, however, lay hidden beneath the surface. The efficient distribution of spoils of war plundered from the islands, from Bravos' adamantite ingots to Dawn's sunset wine, from Lace to Summer Isle's ivory, simultaneously providing the Ironborn fleet with precise intelligence, partly from eyes, controlled by poison and Ironborn blades, secure supply ports, and much-needed repairs and armaments. It laundered black gold with its left hand and supplied the butcher's knife with its right, weaving a vast web covering economics and violence. In just 1 year, its accumulated wealth, according to the parchment scrolls trembling with calculations by the old Meister Clygon in the dim candlelight, far exceeded the total revenue from all the plundering and trade of the Greyjoy family over the previous 10 years. As if summoned by magic, gold coins flooded the once empty warehouses and cellars of Pike City. King Coron stood before the enormous stone window of his study, gazing at the bustling harbour, the mountains of cargo crates piled beneath the castle, and listening to the faint clinking of gold coins. His rough fingers unconsciously traced the cold stone windowsill. A year ago, the 5-year-old boy who had thrown out a shocking salt policy in the Storm Council, met with skepticism, now sat as still as a rock at the centre of the power chessboard. He had silenced the voices of faith with the gift of the drowning gods, chained the economy with bundled sails, built a wall of wealth with monopolies, grasped the reins of violence with precise plunder and distribution, and orchestrated a symphony of black and white with the Ice and Fire Merchant Guild. Every step was precise, ruthless, and effective. The voices of doubt had long since crumbled into bubbles before the tide of gold and absolute control. Many lords even suggested that Euron be made their heir. Chapter 29. The Oath of the Grey Sea King. The family banquet hall is filled with a unique aroma of sea salt, grilled fish, and whale oil lamps. The massive black stone table, like a whale skeleton washed ashore, was cold and heavy. The flames in the fireplace leaped, casting distorted and flickering shadows on the rough stone walls, but could not dispel the bone-chilling coldness permeating the hall, a chill seeped into the bones by the salty sea breeze. At one end of the long table, Coron Greyjoy, the king of the Seastone, sat as steadfast as a reef, slicing juicy grilled cod on a plate. His wife, Sansa Greyjoy, a woman from the Blacktide's family of Blacktide Isle, with a lingering melancholy in her eyes, quietly and meticulously carved the fish into pieces, feeding it to her 1-year-old, babbling son, Victarion. Beside them sat Coron's younger brother, the fiery-tempered headmaster Balf Greyjoy, munching heartily on his ale. And at the second seat of the long table sat Euron's older brother, Baron Greyjoy. The occasional clinking of cutlery against the silver plate, the indistinct babbling of the younger brother Victarion, Balf's hearty laughter, and Baron's quirky singing of pirate songs. Coron swallowed a mouthful of fish, his rough fingers picking up the earthenware cup. His gaze, like a cast-out anchor, settled heavily on Euron, who was quietly eating at the other end of the table. His voice wasn't loud, but it shattered the surface calm instantly, like a stone thrown into a deep pool. Today, 2 more lords have made a proposal to me. Coron paused, his gaze sweeping across every face present, finally settling on Euron's calm, almost indifferent face. They wish to designate you, Euron Greyjoy, as my successor. Click. Lady Sansa's silver spoon tapped lightly against the edge of the porcelain plate, producing a subtle yet jarring sound. She looked up abruptly, a flicker of alarm in her eyes, and instinctively tightened her embrace of Victarion. Uncle Balf froze, the murky liquid dripping from his thick beard as he poured the wine. His eyes widened as he looked at Coron, then Euron, before finally settling his gaze on his silent nephew, Balon. The air in the entire hall seemed to be sucked out instantly, leaving only the crackling of the burning wood in the fireplace and the howling of the sea breeze hitting the high windows. At the second seat of the long table, Baron Greyjoy held his knife and fork firmly in his thick arms, his eyes lowered as he focused intently on the food on his plate. He had certainly heard his father's words and understood their significance. Just before the banquet, his father had asked him the same question at the armory. Balon's answer then was straightforward, even carrying a hint of approval for his brother. Euron. That kid's got a knack for it. His mind works faster than a storm. If he really can plunder more gold and fatter sheep from the Iron Islands than I can, what's wrong with letting him be king? It's all Greyjoy's blood that flows on the Iron Throne anyway. Baron loved his family, loved all his brothers, including Euron, who always gave him a bit of a creep. Blood was a chain, stronger than any damn law. An heir. If his father decided, Baron Greyjoy wouldn't even flinch. He just instinctively felt that bringing up such an important matter at the dinner table was a bit too casual. Besides, he was waiting to see how that always pretentious brat would react. While eating his fish, Coron casually asked, "Eulan, what do you think?" "How can I see it? How can I possibly see it? I'll just lie down and see it tilde tilde tilde." Euron remained completely unmoved, even feeling a slight urge to laugh. A reference to Yuanfang from some distant past inadvertently flashed through his mind. His knife and fork continued their precise cuts of the snow-white fish on the plate without pause, his movements elegant beyond his years. He didn't even lift his eyelids, as if his father were discussing tomorrow's, whether rather than the crucial matter of succession that could shake the family's foundation. In a suffocating silence, Euron finally placed a small piece of tender fish meat, its bones removed, into his mouth, chewed it slowly, and swallowed. He picked up a linen napkin, slowly wiped the corner of his mouth, and then raised his heterochromatic eyes. His left eye was like a chaotic abyss that swallowed all light, and his right eye was like a polar ice core frozen in a storm, calmly meeting his father's scrutinizing gaze. "The eldest son inherits." His childish voice was clear and unchanging, without a trace of emotion, as if stating the unchanging law of the tides, and has always been the cornerstone of the Iron Islands and even Westeros. His gaze seemed to casually sweep over Balon sitting opposite him. Baron snorted and continued chewing his fish. He knew this kid was going to bring up tradition and put on an act. The slight resentment he felt, because his younger brother was being favored, was somewhat suppressed. Coron took in Baron's expression and Euron's calm. He leaned forward slightly, like a seasoned captain probing uncharted waters. "But you are the son of the drowned god. The Iron Islands are different from the 6 continental nations. The will of the drowned god is above mortal laws. Succession by non-firstborn sons is not without precedent in our history." His words were like bait, probing the true ambitions in his youngest son's heart. Euron's lips curved upwards in an extremely subtle way. He put down his knife and fork, leaned back in his chair, and gazed out the window at the roaring, boundless, dark sea, as if piercing through the thick stone wall. "Father," his voice remained calm, yet carried a grandeur and ethereal quality beyond his years, almost divine. "Wherever one can smell the sea or hear the sound of the waves." He paused slightly, each word like a crystal of sea salt, striking the silent stone hall, "is my territory." These words, like an invisible storm, instantly swept through the entire hall. Lady Sansa gasped, her face turning deathly pale. Uncle Balf's mouth gaped open, oblivious to the dripping wine. Even Baron, who had been keeping his head down, tensed almost imperceptibly for a moment. Euron's gaze swept across their shocked faces, finally settling on Coron, his heterochromatic eyes seeming to burn with a ghostly flame from the deep sea. I prefer the oath of the Grey King. I will rule the seas, and I will rule the rocky lands, wearing a robe woven from seaweed, and with the teeth of the Naga for my towering pale crown. He repeated the oldest and most sublime legend of the Iron Islands, his voice not loud, but carrying an undeniable, ancient, heavy echo. The hall was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. Only the flickering fire in the fireplace illuminated every face etched with shock. Euron's gaze finally fell on his brother Baron, who stood opposite him as silent as a mountain. His tone became unusually gentle, even carrying a childlike, innocent, and mischievous teasing, as if he were teasing a hot-tempered but close friend. "So, father," he spread out his small palm, making a take-it-and-play-with-it gesture, his heterochromatic eyes gleaming with a mischievous gleam. "This little Iron Islands can stay with brother Baron." He even deliberately imitated the tone of an adult coaxing a child, drawing out the last syllable. His abilities should be able to watch the house. Well, his tone and expression were exactly what he was saying. "Big brother, you can play with this toy for now, just don't lose it. I'm going to play with a bigger one." Bang, crunch. A sickening metallic creak suddenly rang out. Baron Grager's face instantly turned a deep shade of liver. He understood. He completely understood the flippant tone in this little brat's words, the tone that implied he was being treated like a watchdog. What watch the house? He, Baron Granger, was the wolf of Pike City, the iron captain who could tear enemy ships apart. How old was this brat? Daring to speak to him in such a coaxing tone towards Victarion. And charitably, the Iron Islands. The anger of being mocked and looked down upon by his younger brother surged to his head. Forget about being the son of the drowned god. He'd beat him up first and let him know who the big brother was. A surge of violent power was instantly unleashed upon the knife and fork in his hand. The thick, heavy steel knife was twisted and deformed by his forceful grip, becoming like soft mud. The tines of the fork dug deep into the flesh of his palm, oozing beads of bright red blood. He abruptly raised his head, his eyes wide with rage, staring intently at Euron like a furious sea lion toyed with by a seal, his roar sending dust flying from the roof. "You little brat. I want to beat you to death." The roar was filled with genuine, overwhelming rage, but deeper, it also revealed a mixed feeling of embarrassment, resentment, and the typical elder brother's fury. A mixture of anger, disrespect, and the frustration of being so disrespectfully mocked by his closest, though eccentric, younger brother. Blood ties remained, but at this moment, all he wanted was to grab this brat and give him a good spanking. A scene of brotherly affection and respect unfolded in the banquet hall. Euron circled the table, avoiding his furious brother, until his mother hugged him with a smile. Only then did Balon stop his rage and return to his seat. After a brief silence, King Corran looked at Balf and held out his hand, saying, "You lost. 100 gold dragons." Balf rolled his eyes. He thought it was just a joke between brothers, but his older brother, Corrin, had actually flipped the table. Accepting his loss, Balf tossed over a jingling bag of gold coins, shaking his head and sighing. Sigh, shouldn't the younger brother be plotting to overthrow the older brother eagerly wiping out the monster, and then the two of them fighting it out? Why is the king of the Iron Islands so worthless now? A bet. A bet that the two brothers might fall out over this. Baron was shocked and roared, "Damn it. How can you bet on something like this? How can you joke about something like this?" King Corran and Balf laughed heartily, completely unconcerned. Euron, however, sensed something amiss and frowned, saying, "Perhaps many people truly wish to see what Uncle Balf described." Corran sighed and said with a faint smile, "Baron, I must say, your brother's IQ is definitely much higher than yours." Baron paused for a moment, then realized what was happening and said, "Father, do you mean someone is deliberately spreading these rumors to see us brothers at odds with the family?" "And then?" "What do you mean, then?" "The person who did this definitely had bad intentions. Catch them and kill them. But there are quite a few lords who think this way now. Some are plotting something, some are just following the crowd, and some are genuinely sincere. Should we arrest and kill them all? Then let's capture them first, and then we'll have plenty of ways to make them understand. Those are all Ironborn, nobles and lords of the Iron Islands, not salt slaves to be killed at will, nor are they your prisoners. You're not going to just arrest or kill them. Do you want to throw the Iron Islands into chaos? Well then." Corran ignored his headstrong eldest son and looked at Euron, asking, "Euron, what do you think? How am I supposed to see it? What can I possibly see it? A very effective and very vicious plot. What I mean is," Euron smiled slightly, "we should just wait quietly. And since they want to see us brothers at odds, let them have their way. When the time comes, there will definitely be some people around me and Baron, using all sorts of pretexts to offer us advice. Those who seem the most enthusiastic and willing to provide all kinds of help are just the rats in the shadows." Baron scratched his head and said, "Acting. I'm good at that. No wonder everyone calls you a prodigy. You came up with an idea in such a short time. It's really strange. We all eat the same salted fish. How does your brain work?" As he spoke, he rubbed Euron's hair and pinched his cheek hard. "Brother, don't let this turn into reality and make you completely fooled by those people. What if you really do kill me? You bastard, are you laughing at me for being dumber than you, or are you looking down on me? It's all right, actually, there's a little bit of each." The scene of brotherly love and respect once again appeared in the banquet hall. Chapter 30. Arranging my brother's wedding. Every Wednesday afternoon, the top floor of the bachelor's tower is always filled with the scent of aged parchment, sour wine, and some deeper, more intellectual dust. Sunlight streamed through the thick, stained glass windows, its rays slicing into murky beams that illuminated the slowly drifting particles in the air. Euron Greyjoy, a child barely taller than the high-backed chair, was huddled in the enormous chair made of whalebone and ironwood, almost swallowed whole by the behemoth. Opposite him, Corran Greyjoy, king of the Seastone, sat as imposingly as a mountain, his rough fingers tracing the letter, recently delivered by ravens and bearing the bronze chain seal of the citadel. The message in the letter was heavy as lead. The long summer that had lasted for a full 10 years was about to end, followed by at least 3 years of bitter cold, 277 AC to 79 AC. "Euron, what do you think?" Corran's voice was deep, like distant thunder. This wasn't asking a child's opinion, but testing the mind of an heir. "How can I read this? How can I possibly read this? I'll read it lying down." A nonsensical idea from some distant time and space flashed through Euron's mind, bringing a sense of absurd detachment. But his heterochromatic eyes calmly swept over every rigorous and cold character on the letter, and he raised his eyes, his childlike voice clear and crisp, without the slightest hesitation. The Meisters of the Citadel have been observing the stars, recording the tides, and dissecting the clouds for thousands of years. Their predictions may occasionally have slight deviations, but they have never been completely wrong. This 10-year-long summer is itself a defiance of the natural order, so the ensuing winter will surely correct all of this with double the severity. His small finger pointed to the prediction on the letter regarding the length of the winter. 3 years. Perhaps that's a conservative estimate. The Iron Islands must stockpile enough food to last at least 3 years, and my suggestion is the more the better. In the long winter, surplus grain is more powerful than surplus gold. Corin nodded slowly, his jawline like a weathered reef. We have a year left. The roses of Highgarden are struggling to survive. Their provisions will only flow to the golden dragons of King's Landing. The North and the Vale, their vast lands, will only produce more hunger in winter. His gaze drifted to the grey-green sea beneath the gloom outside the window. It seems only the free cities of the East and Pentos remain. Food, timber, and furs and grease that will keep our people warm in the icy sea, Euron interjected, his tone as if reciting a common trade list, have always been our most important and frequent transactions with the outside world. Since news of the approaching winter spread like wildfire throughout the Seven Kingdoms, the masts at Iron Salt Harbor have grown denser day by day. Under Euron's behind-the-scenes coordination, the longship fleets belonging to the Ice and Fire, Trading Company, and various lords are traversing the narrow sea with unprecedented efficiency, like busy worker ants stockpiling food for their nests for the winter. However, before the breath of winter truly touches the towering towers of Piketown, a crucial matter concerning the Greyjoy family's bloodline and power urgently needs to be resolved: the marriage of their eldest son, Balon. In this archipelago where iron and blood are the laws, marriage is never a personal pleasure, but rather a family game. Especially for the heir to the Seastone King, his bride must be a sufficiently significant bargaining chip. Winter lasts 3 years, and before it arrives, the marriage of Euron's brother Balon must be completed. Otherwise, they will have to wait another 3 years. According to Westeros custom, the 3 years of winter are the best time to have children. Euron doesn't want to delay the birth of his nephew and niece. The following day, Euron stood alone deep within the Greyjoy family's crypt. The cold, salty air swirled around the whale oil lamps that burned eternally on the stone walls, casting flickering shadows. His fingertips traced the inscriptions on the stone coffins, blurred by time and sea winds, feeling the ancient glory and death recorded therein. The 5-year-old child's body appeared as small as a speck of dust beneath the massive, imposing statues of his ancestors. Yet the calm calculation in his eyes was colder and harder than the ice at the deepest part of the crypt. "Master," a soft yet clear voice broke the silence. Lisa appeared behind him unnoticed, like a ghost emerging from the shadows. She presented him with a roll of yellowed parchment, the Harlow family information you requested. Euron took the scroll, which slowly unfurled in his hands. Dense text and diagrams outlined the bloodline, power distribution, and recent undercurrents of another great Iron Islands family. His gaze finally settled on a name: Alanis Harlow, the 16-year-old niece of the family head, her mother from the Blacks family, and her father an Iron Fleet captain who had died 10 years earlier in battle at the Stepstone Islands. "Tell me about her." Euron's voice was very soft, almost swallowed up by the roar of the waves crashing against the tomb's foundation. Lisa lowered her eyes, the firelight dancing on her long eyelashes. Her eyes are a rare light sea green, her hair a deep brown uncommon in the Iron Islands, like oak sunk to the depths. She can prepare medicine to cure high fevers at the still, and play melodies that evoke homesickness in sailors on her lyre. But last month, someone witnessed her precisely piercing the neck of a seagull, stealing a catch from 10 paces away with a skinning knife. Last year, she threw away the tokens of marriage proposals from both of Stontley's sons. A faint, almost imperceptible smile appeared on Euron's lips. "Perfect." The close branch of the Harlow family, closely connected to Blacks through the maternal line, possessed both a certain exotic cultural refinement and the inherent ferocity of the Ironborn. More importantly, the Harlow family controlled the Iron Islands' vast knowledge base, and their fleets were more interested in trade routes than plundering ancient trails. This marriage would cleverly combine Greyjoy's toughness with Harlow's wisdom and wealth. Moreover, in the predetermined course of history, this Alanis was destined to be Baron's rock wife, bearing him offspring who would inherit the Greyjoy name and his wild nature. Euron had no intention of altering this already written chapter. He even looked forward to the nephews and nieces destined to be born. 3 days later, the training ground was filled with sweat, the clanging of metal against metal, and heavy breathing. Baron Greyjoy was furiously hacking a heavy battle axe into an oak dummy, splinters flying everywhere. Each swing was imbued with the unvented energy of the 19-year-old and the pent-up frustration that had accumulated since his father issued the new rules of the ancient road. Steam rose from his bronze skin, and his muscular back resembled a restless volcano. "Brother," a calm child's voice, completely out of place with his current state of mind, rang out. Baron paused, panting, and turned around to see Euron standing on the sidelines, holding a small wine barrel with iron hoops. "Try this." Euron handed over the barrel of wine. Baron took it suspiciously, uncorked it, and took a big gulp. A strong burning sensation instantly rushed to his throat, making him cough involuntarily, but his eyes lit up. Dawn's red venom. "Where did you get this, little?" "It was sent by Alanis Harlotto." Euron blinked, a sly glint in his heterochromatic eyes. "She said that of all the islands, only the eldest son of House Greyjoy deserves this blood-igniting spirit." Baron's ears turned red at a visible speed. As if he had been burned, he rudely shoved the barrel back into Euron's arms, deliberately raising his voice to cover his momentary embarrassment. "HMPH. Those bookworms and accountants of the Harlow family." "She's not." Euron slowly pulled a dagger from his pocket. The dagger was exquisitely crafted, but the handle was wrapped with non-slip seaweed fibers, a strange yet practical design. "Look at this. Last month near Kurashio Island, a mill sailor tried to steal her amber necklace, and she used this to precisely pierce his throat." He paused, then added, "A fatal blow." Baron instinctively softened his movements as he took the dagger. His fingertips traced the cold blade, and he could almost smell a faint, lingering stench of rust. He stared silently at the blood-stained weapon, as if seeing something else through it. "If nothing unexpected happens, she'll soon be your rock wife, my sister-in-law." Euron's tone carried the undisguised teasing unique to brothers. "You've met Alanis, brother. In terms of looks, courage, and that spirit, she's a perfect match for you, a reef who only knows how to chop. It's a gift from the sea god. I really don't know what kind of dog shit you ate to get such good luck, tilde tilde tilde. You brat. Is it any of your business how you get involved?" Baron, like a wildcat whose tail had been stepped on, instantly replaced his nascent, unfamiliar emotions with familiar rage. "Looks like it's been a while since you've been intimate. Are you itching for a beating? Come on. Let your dear brother see if your tongue is any more nimble than your skills." Before he finished speaking, he kicked a heavy wooden axe used for practice at Euron, then drew another axe with his other hand and brought it down with a fierce gust of wind. The force was fierce and merciless, yet it miraculously avoided all vital points. Euron deftly dodged to the side, the wind whipped by the wooden axe ruffling the black hair on his forehead. He was unarmed, only a knowing smile playing on his lips, and began to contend with his enraged brother on the gravel-strewn training ground. For a moment, the only sounds in the arena were the muffled thuds of clashing wooden objects, Baron's roar, the whistling of wind as Euron occasionally dodged lightly, and a certain hardcore and passionate way of communication, unique to the Greyjoy brothers of the Iron Islands. Chapter 31. The Marriage of Harlow. The Harlow family's 10 Towers was not as somber and imposing as Pike Place City. It was more like a vast nest perched atop a grey cliff, pieced together from towers, studies, and an observatory. Even the sea breeze seemed gentle here, carrying the scents of parchment, old ink, and dried seaweed. When Euron Greyjoy's small boat docked, there was no commotion, as was usually heard when Ironborn visited. Only a few clerks in plain robes, their eyes sharp as hawks, silently led him through the stone steps marked with the marks of the tides. Euron was accompanied only by a guard of 10 men led by Dagmar and his handmaid Lisa. Exploration. Discover Harlow Island. Earn 80 points. Explore. Discover Harlow Island. The library tower. Earn 15 points. In the circular room at the top of the largest library tower, he met Earl Roderick Harlow, known as the Scholar. Unlike most Iron Island's lords, the Earl was muscular and lean, wearing a worn velvet robe, his fingers stained with ink, and a pair of insightful grey eyes hidden behind a long table piled with scrolls and astrolabes. Euron Greyjoy, Roderick's voice was calm, with the deliberate caution of a scholar. The sea monster chick from Pike City has flown alone to 10 Towers. This is unlike Coron. Is it to borrow some books on greenhouse cultivation for the long winter nights to come? Euron bowed slightly, his manners impeccable, his heterochromatic eyes appearing even more eerie in the dim light streaming through the tower windows. Earl Roderick, he said, my father's eyes are fixed on the grain ships to the east. I have come here for a matter of greater importance, one that concerns the future of the Iron Islands bloodline. Without beating around the bush, he produced a scroll carefully wrapped in sealskin. On behalf of my brother, Baron Greyjoy, heir to Pikeshire, I propose marriage to Miss Alanis Harlow, the jewel of your family. Roderick didn't take it immediately. He simply tapped lightly with his fingers on an open ancient book, which was covered with intricate tide diagrams. Baron. That child is like an unsheathed axe, sharp, but also prone to hurting himself and those around him. Alanis, he paused, a hint of Elder's gentleness flashing in his eyes. She needs more than just a husband who can wield an axe. That is why this marriage is so fitting. Euron's voice was calm and steady. Brother Baron possesses the will of a rock and the courage of an unyielding warrior. He is a natural-born warrior and leader, capable of leading Greyjoy's glory to new heights. And Miss Alanis, her wisdom, her medical skills, and even her precise swordsmanship, forgive me for the anecdotes I've heard, can be the most resilient vines on the rock, smoothing the rough edges and adding abundance. Greyjoy's fierceness needs Harlow's wisdom to guide its direction, and Harlow's knowledge and trade networks need Greyjoy's strength to protect them. This is not merely a union of two families, but a fusion of the spirit of the old ways and the path of the new, designed to make the Iron Islands stronger, not merely richer, in the coming winter and into the distant future. He stepped forward and gently placed the document in a gap on the table. Besides, he raised his eyes, his gaze seemingly piercing through the pages. In the long night that is about to engulf the world, what could bring more warmth and strength than the close bond of blood? This is not conquest, but alliance, the oldest and most enduring covenant. Roderick remained silent for a long time. Only the howling sea breeze and the soft rustling of papers filled the tower. Finally, he reached out, his fingertips brushing against the sealskin scroll, as if sensing its weight and the promise it carried. He looked out the window. The shadow of 10 Towers was slowly lengthening, covering the bustling port below and the endless sea in the distance. Alanis did say that in all of Pike City, only the wrath of Greyjoy's eldest son reminded her of the taste of Dornish liquor. However, I still need to consult her and her mother before I can reply, the Earl finally said slowly, a barely perceptible smile playing on his lips. Of course I should. Euron blinked and said, this is my first time on Harlow Island, and I'd like to explore around. I wonder if it's convenient for me. Every time he explores a new location, he can earn corresponding points. It's shameful to waste them, but every little bit counts. Euron never complains. Roderick readily agreed. Of course, our distinguished guest can. Pike City, Temple of Poseidon. On the wedding day, the Temple of Poseidon resembled more than ever the belly of a sunken behemoth. Beneath the enormous stone dome, hundreds of whale oil torches were embedded in iron rings in the walls, their flickering flames casting shifting shadows on the bizarrely tattooed, bald heads of the drowning priests, and elongating, distorting the shadows of all the guests onto the slippery, salt-covered black stone floor. The air was salty and heavy, a mixture of seawater, burning oil, cold stone, and a more primal, mysterious aura belonging to deep-sea rituals. Baron Grage wore a brand-new black leather jacket with a golden krite embroidered on the chest. He stood ramrod straight, like a mast nailed to an altar, his jaw clenched, and his eyes, usually burning with rage, now held a deeper, more complex emotion, a solemn acceptance of the impending, inescapable fate. His gaze, occasionally, swept over the woman beside him. Alanis Harlow did not wear the elaborate silks commonly seen on noble ladies of the continent. Instead, she wore a thick, dark green wool dress, simple in design, edged with silver-embroidered wave patterns, and a cloak woven from polished black fish scales draped over her shoulders. Her dark brown hair was braided into a thick plait that hung down her front, adorned with small, star-like pearls. In her hand, she did indeed hold a ceremonial dagger, its scabbard made of walrus ivory. Her posture was not that of a shy bride, but more like that of a female warrior about to swear a blood oath with her allies, her green eyes calmly receiving the various gazes cast upon her: curiosity, scrutiny, awe, and even a hint of barely perceptible jealousy. The drowning priest's voice was loud and hoarse as he chanted the ancient Iron people's wedding vows, each syllable seemingly carrying the weight of the sea and echoing from the abyss. You are the rock, and they are the chains that bind you, enabling you to stand firm in the storm. You are the blade, and that is your whetstone and scabbard, ensuring that your sharpness never fades and that you never harm yourself. The two of you will sail together to the other shore, where you will share a place in the palace of the drowned god. The climax of the ceremony wasn't the exchange of rings. The priest brought out a rough, black stone bowl filled with icy, almost black seawater. Baron and Alanis simultaneously dipped their hands into the water, the biting cold instantly tensing their muscles. With a coral-inlaid dagger, the priest swiftly drew a shallow line of blood across their intertwined wrists. A few drops of blood blended into the inky water and quickly disappeared. "Salt!" the pastor shouted, sprinkling a handful of coarse sea salt into the bowl. "With ice!" He threw in another small piece of ice that would never melt. Legend has it that it came from the far north. "With blood," he finally said, pointing to their mingled blood. "You shall unite. Until the seas run dry, until the stars fall. The ceremony is complete." The pastor poured the seawater, which was a mixture of salt, ice, and blood, from the bowl onto the feet of the two men, where it seeped into the cracks in the rocks. There were no sweet kisses, no cheers. Instead, all the iron-born nobles and captains in the hall struck the ground heavily with the hilts of their swords and axes, producing a deep, rhythmic boom, like war drums, like the rumble of thunder before a tsunami, the highest form of recognition and blessing from the Iron Islands. Baron turned his head, looking at his bride for the first time truly and carefully. Alanis was looking at him too, her face devoid of a shy blush, only displaying a calm assessment and resolute acceptance. She slightly raised the dagger in her hand, a small yet powerful movement. Amidst the roar, King Coron remained calm, his eyes reflecting satisfaction at the consolidation of his family's interests. Lady Sansa held Victarion tightly, a hint of worry in her eyes, yet also a faint hope for the newborn's future. She stroked her belly, where a new Grage awaited birth. Uncle Balf grinned broadly, playfully punching the shoulder of the person beside him. Euron Greyjoy stood silently in the shadow of a massive stone pillar in the temple, watching the brother and sister-in-law, united in an ancient ceremony before the altar, destined to face storms and winters together, and silently offered his blessings. This marriage, which he had personally orchestrated, conforming to both fate and self-interest, had landed firmly in its predetermined position on the vast chessboard, but at the same time he felt a heavier burden on his shoulders. He did not want his future nephew and niece to suffer any tragic fate. Chapter 32 Lottery, Brooke's Sword. His brief visit to Harlow Island ultimately earned him 160 points. The harvest wasn't abundant, but it met expectations. Firstly, his stay was short, and secondly, although he held the title of the second son of the King of the Iron Islands, to the deeply entrenched and established Harlow family and their people, he was ultimately an outsider who needed to be wary. Many corners were off limits to him, and many eyes held a watchful gaze, which greatly limited his efficiency in acquiring points. With the plan to cross the ocean imminent, Euron needed power more than ever. With a slight thought, the system interface glowed, and a full 100 points instantly evaporated, plunging into the unfathomable vortex of rewards. A chilling sensation, felt only by him, swept through the depths of his soul, as if the gates of the underworld had opened for a moment. Acquired weapon, soul-slaying sword. A chill gathered, and a slender Western-style rapier quietly fell into his hand. The sword was extremely thin, yet it shimmered with an inhuman, chilling blue light, as if forged from millennia-old ice marrow. Its weight was unusually light, feeling weightless in the hand, yet strangely maintaining perfect balance. This was the sword of Brooke, the musician and swordsman of the Straw Hat Pirates, and one of the top officers of the Straw Hat Grand Fleet from another world. Wherever its blade pointed, it could not only tear flesh, but also inflict a bone-chilling coldness from the underworld, enough to make an enemy scream in despair as their blood froze. For Euron, who is not known for his pure strength, this light, eerie, and deadly magic sword came at just the right time. Euron hung the soul-slaying sword on his left hip. It no longer belonged to Brooke, so Euron gave it his own name, Frost's Spirit. This extra rapier had attracted attention, but only attention. Only Baron, itching to try it out, then scoffed, a little girl's toy. Euron's gaze swept across the grey, hazy sea outside the window, his fingertips unconsciously tapping the rough wooden table. How many more months until winter, as the Meisters in the Citadel speculate? Lisa didn't even look up, her voice clear and calm. 3 months. The Raven letters from the north confirm this. The cold winds have already begun to gather north of the neck. 3 months. That should be enough time. Euron stood up, his shadow shifting across the stone wall as he moved. For the next 2 months, I will traverse the rest of the Iron Islands, leaving no one untouched. My father has entrusted me with this important task, and I must see for myself whether their granaries are full, whether their roofs are strong enough to withstand the wind and snow, whether their swords are sharp, and whether they truly need no help at all. He spoke calmly, offering seemingly legitimate reasons. However, deep down, this tour was far more than simply showing concern for the people or fulfilling his responsibilities. Each island is a chessboard waiting to be played. Every appearance, every promise, even every act of punishment will become a silent bargaining chip, accumulating Euron's points. He needs these points, yearning for the rewards from the Pirate King system that follow. The journey across the narrow sea is already faintly beckoning from afar, a perilous path filled with unknown storms, bizarre techniques, and ruthless enemies. Beyond that vast expanse, any external assistance may vanish like mist. Only the power held tightly in one's own hands is the sole reliance for cleaving through the waves and surviving. For the next 2 months, Euron Greyjoy's footsteps followed the dark hull of the drinking ship, traversing every inch of the untamed waters of the Iron Islands. This was not a leisurely cruise, but a silent storm. The drinking ship, like an extension of his will, broke through the leaden waves and visited the rocky, howling islands one after another. Despite being only 7 years old, no lord of the Iron Islands dared to regard Euron Greyjoy as an ordinary child. He controls Platinum Sands, nothing more than gold, but a source of power far more intoxicating than any other substance. No one knows the origin of this secret formula, but its blazing white light obeys only his will. Every grain of sand allocated to the island nobles is determined by his slender fingers. This gift can elevate a family to prominence or deprive another of theirs, plunging them into oblivion. All the merchant shipping routes leading to wealth and plunder, like interwoven threads of fate, ultimately converge at his fingertips. He decides which routes are revealed, and which raids along the ancient routes can proceed. The power with which the Ironborn wield their swords actually originates from the meticulously crafted plans silently operating in his mind. Even more awe-inspiring is that the unfathomable drowning god seemed to crown him through the priests. The priests loudly sang his miracles before the smoke-filled altar, honoring him as the son of drowning god. Thus, religious fervor and secular authority were strangely fused in him. When the distinctive black sails of the Havoc appear on the horizon of any island, the entire territory instantly enters a tense, ritualistic state, a mixture of anticipation and fear. The horns on the watchtowers would sound at a specific rhythm, no longer as a warning of an enemy, but conveying a more complex message: he's coming. The port would immediately descend into orderly chaos. The lords would never wait for the ships to dock before making hasty preparations. They would immediately don their finest furs or chainmail, order their servants to sweep the courtyards as quickly as possible, bring out the most precious sour ale and cured meats from their cellars, and force the sea-smelling, boisterous crew to temporarily quiet down and form a procession that at least appeared respectful. No lord would regard this visit as a mere courtesy call. In their eyes, the gradually becoming clearer warship was not carrying a child, but rather a moving treasure trove and an invisible scepter. The welcoming ceremony at the dock was always overly elaborate, even bordering on clumsy flattery. The lord himself was always present, followed by all the important members of his family and tense-looking scholars. Their faces were plastered with the most sincere smiles possible, but their eyes were racing. Why was he here this time? To inspect the tribute, to allocate the share of Platinum Sands, to reveal the next season's shipping routes. Or had he heard some unfavorable rumors? No matter how full the wine glasses were at the banquet, they couldn't mask the cautious and inquisitive atmosphere in the air. Every toast was laced with hidden meaning, and every report on the territory's situation was carefully chosen. They displayed the ample grain reserves and strong warriors in the warehouses not out of pride, but to prove their worth and loyalty, hoping to gain more favor in the upcoming distribution. What they feared was not his age of 7, but the absolute power he represented. The flight information that could ignite greed and war, the white gold sands, quota that could determine the rise and fall of a family, and the terrifying legitimacy endorsed by the drowned god priests, bordering on divine authority. Each of Euron's visits was a mini-king election for them, a test of their fate. The object of their bows was not just a 7-year-old body, but also the undisputed embodiment of power that controlled the lifeline of the Iron Islands. He appeared to be fulfilling his duty as the second son to patrol the border in place of his father, inquiring with concern about grain reserves, ships, and preparations for winter. But his sharp, hawk-like eyes were measuring something deeper: the hearts of the people, the price of loyalty, and the depths that fear could reach. Of course, for Euron at this moment, the most important thing was to gain the points that would make him even stronger. Chapter 33, One Peace System, consecutive draws. The Iron Islands, a territory built of icy waters and hard rocks, are centered around 7 main islands. Pike Isle, ruled by House Grage; Great Wake Isle, rich in minerals; Old Wake Isle, ancient and sacred; Harlow Isle, vast and powerful; Salt Cliff Isle with its towering cliffs; Kurashio Isle with its turbulent currents; and Oak Isle, lush with trees. This time Euron, aboard the Drinking Spree, soared like a tireless sea eagle, traversing lands he had never set foot on before. He ventured deep into the smoke-shrouded mines of Great Wake Island, set foot on the ancient reefs of Old Wake Island, where the King's Council was held, surveyed the towering white cliffs of Salt Cliff Island, explored the treacherous whirlpools of Black Tide Island, and traversed the gloomy forests of Oak Isle. He didn't even overlook the more than 20 uninhabited miniature reefs scattered around the main island, meticulously etching every corner of the Iron Islands into his mind. This almost obsessive, comprehensive tour brought him a rich reward, a full 1030 points. As the bow of the Drinking Spree once again crashed through the familiar waves of Pike Isle, before the ship had even come to a complete stop, Euron had already eagerly immersed himself in the depths of his consciousness, initiating the mysterious extraction ritual. 10 dazzling lights flashed in succession, and the gifts of fate were presented one after another. Food, seafood fried rice, a steaming bowl of fried rice, generously filled with ingredients. The sweetness of the seafood seems to dispel the salty smell of the sea breeze. This was the first dish Sanji, Blackleg, made when he appeared on the Straw Hat Pirates ship. It was indeed delicious, but it was just food. Eat while it's hot, it smells so good. Special item, Bloodline Factor, in one piece, the life blueprint discovered by scientists Vegapunk and Vinsmoke, Judge, Sanji's father, is defined as the core substance that determines the genetic characteristics of organisms, posing a danger of modifying their genes. In the anime, it is implanted in offspring during the embryonic stage, granting them superhuman strength, venom abilities, and exoskeleton defenses upon growth. It's impossible to return Euron to his womb state right now, so under the adjustment of the world's will, it becomes. Taking it may activate the bloodline hidden in the body. Talent, archaeologist. A sudden awakening of intuition gives him extraordinary insight into historical fragments found in ancient stone carvings and shipwrecks. He also possesses a talent for language learning far exceeding that of ordinary people. Skill, beginner shipbuilding. A wealth of knowledge about keel selection, ship design, and wave-resistant structures flooded his mind, far surpassing the current skills of the Iron Islands. Skill, cooking skills LV1, has gained exquisite control over the ingredients, heat, and seasoning, no longer limited to simple roasting. Skill, beginner meteorology, able to interpret changes in cloud cover, wind direction, and ocean waves, and predict short-term weather patterns. Talent, fishman breathing, lung capacity is strangely enhanced, allowing the user to hold their breath underwater for extended periods, much like a creature from sea folklore. Skill, naval 6 styles, paper drawing LV1 mastered a strange dodging technique, able to move like paper in the wind during battle, sensing air currents and dissipating force. Item, dancing powder, a small bag of strange powder, said to be able to mysteriously interfere with rainfall in specific areas, containing dangerous political potential. Perhaps it can have miraculous effects at certain times. Item, sea stone, a dull, pigeon egg-sized, strange mineral that, when held in the hand, exudes an unsettling, faint energy and may have a remarkable effect on certain individuals. But it has a hardness comparable to diamond, so who in Westeros could use it for forging? Of the 10 lottery draws, the least useful one in Euron's eyes was naturally the already eaten food, seafood fried rice. Next was skill, cooking skills. It wasn't that it was bad, but given his current noble status, he rarely had the opportunity to showcase his culinary skills in the kitchen. Skill, basic shipbuilding, and skill, basic meteorology, were more of a long-term investment. Item, dancing powder, and item, sea stone, would be carefully collected, as they might come in handy someday. The most useful ones were skill, naval 6 styles, paper drawing LV1, talent, archaeologist, and talent, fishman breathing. Months ago, a Bravo's water dancer set foot on the hard ground of Pike Island. His name was Rafael Ortega, elegant yet tinged with melancholy. He hadn't come for adventure or fortune, but for a passionate yet disastrous love affair. He was infatuated with a famous Bravo's courtesan, and in a duel for her, he felled the darling of a powerful business tycoon with a rapier. Victory won him the beauty's fleeting favor, but also attracted relentless pursuit and hatred, forcing him to flee to the Iron Islands across the narrow sea for refuge. Since Euron mastered the skill, naval 6 styles paper drawing, his combat ability has undergone a qualitative leap. Raphael's rapier was as swift as a viper's tongue, but it repeatedly missed against Euron's increasingly acute senses. Euron's movements became like a leaf drifting in the wind, accurately predicting and matching the airflow of each attack, ensuring that the fatal tip of his sword always grazed the hem of his clothes by the slightest margin. The two faced off daily at their seaside training ground, the sounds of metal clashing mingling with the roar of the waves. One imparted all of Bravos' flowing swordsmanship, while the other honed this art of evasion to the point of instinct. Meanwhile, Euron's talent, archaeologist, endowed him not only with insight into antiquities, but also with an extraordinary comprehension of linguistic symbols. His astonishing speed in learning other languages from Lisa surprised even her. Obscure grammar and ancient vocabulary quickly took their place and connected in his mind. Within months, he had overcome the stumbles of a beginner and could engage in profound conversations with Lisa in fluent and accurate Higher Valyrian. The language of ancient emperors, spoken by him, carried a chilling authority. The talent, fishman breathing, completely transformed Euron's relationship with the sea. He was no longer merely a ship-riding raider, but became an integral part of the ocean. He could dive deep into the cold, dark depths like a seal, and the powerful function of his lungs allowed him to remain on the seabed for extended periods. He moved through the reefs faster than even startled schools of fish, agile and free, as if gravity had lost its effect in the water. This sea, which had once nurtured the Ironborn and also devoured countless Ironborn, now stood before him as a vast garden to be explored and conquered at will. Finally, Euron stared at the special item, Bloodline Factor. Euron stood alone atop the tallest sea stack on Pike Island, beneath him roaring, inky waves crashing against the black rocks. He clutched the black jade container tightly in his hand, its swirling liquid seeming to imprison a miniature, raging ocean. Without hesitation, he tilted his head back and poured it into his mouth. A chilling cold, unlike anything found in the mortal world, exploded forth, freezing his blood and breath, as if swallowing the core of the heart of eternal winter. Then a scorching heat surged back, like molten lava burning and surging through every vein. He groaned, collapsing to one knee, his nails digging deep into the hard rock. His bones crackled under the strain, his muscle fibers torn and frantically reformed. His consciousness was cast into an endless, dark ocean, sinking into a vortex of agony. Just as his consciousness was about to fade, a magnificent vision unfolded before him. A towering throne, constructed from colossal corals, the skeletons of pale sea monsters, and countless shipwreck keels, stood at the bottom of the silent abyss. Upon the throne, a blurry yet incredibly majestic figure sat silently, adorned with intertwined seaweed and a somber crown, a massive pale bone spear in his hand, seemingly capable of piercing the primordial chaos. Giant sea dragons and sirens of the North Sea humbly prostrated themselves at his feet. It was the Grey Sea King, the progenitor of all the oceans in the Ironborn mythology. The excruciating pain receded like a tide, and an unprecedented sense of power surged from the depths of his veins, vast and ancient. He slowly rose, his body as light as sea foam, yet containing the heavy strength of a reef. The world had been completely transformed in his perception. He could clearly hear the ripples stirred up by a school of mackerel fleeing in fright miles away, smell the sulphurous odor emanating from a deep-sea volcano, and even touch the dormant, slowly pulsating lee lines at the foundation of the island beneath his feet. Pike Island was no longer just cold stone. It seemed to have become an extension of his body. A deeper change stemmed from the depths of his soul. A desolate, majestic, and inhuman will awakened within him. When he once again gazed upon the vast ocean that had swallowed countless ironborn ancestors, his gaze was entirely different. No longer that of a conqueror examining a beast to be tamed, but that of a returning king looking down upon his innate and unquestionable territory. This bloodline had not bestowed upon him the divine skill to manipulate the sea, but rather granted him an unparalleled affinity and understanding of it, a sense of awe that inspired instinctive reverence in all sea creatures, and a primal sense of submission deeply rooted in the blood of every ironborn, a sense that sent shivers down the spine. His eyes were no longer the windows of mortals. His left eye was the black of an abyss that devoured everything, purer than the deepest midnight, as if all light falling into it would be crushed and absorbed, leaving only absolute emptiness and deathly silence. In contrast, his right eye was the frigid blue of the sea before a storm, seemingly imprisoning thunder and lightning that was about to erupt and tear the sky and sea apart, surging with almost violent energy. Grey Sea King Bloodline 1. Extended ocean perception. Consciousness can spread outwards like a jellyfish, allowing the perception of subtle changes in ocean currents, the movement of schools of fish, and even the approach of large creatures, such as seals and sharks, within miles without visual observation. This is especially strong during stormy weather, enabling the user to read the anger and rhythm of the waves. 2. Large marine creatures will instinctively feel awe or curiosity towards you, rather than actively attacking you. You can even command legendary sea beasts. 3. Deep sea body. Strength and endurance are significantly amplified in water, and swimming speed rivals that of the fastest dolphins. The body is better able to resist water pressure and cold, allowing for dives to depths far exceeding those of ordinary people, and maintaining core body temperature and mobility in icy seawater. 4. Bloodline Majesty. Ironborn who worship the drowned god will experience a deep-seated awe and obedience. 5. Unknown. 6. Unknown. These eyes, one abyssal and the other azure, are a manifestation of the power deep within his bloodline. Eye of the abyss, left eye black. All illusions and magical disguises are exposed before this absolute reality. Illusions distort and dissipate like veils thrown into a raging fire, revealing their ugly or mundane true nature. He can even consciously regard the pain and toxins within his body as impurities, drawing them out and devouring them with his will, turning them into nothingness. With just a glance, even a burning flame will dim and extinguish rapidly, leaving only wisps of smoke, as if choked by an invisible hand. Azure eye, right eye blue. This eye governs the violent forces of the outside world. Wherever his gaze falls, the water flows no longer freely, but obeys his will, gathering, swirling, and transforming into a gigantic fist that impacts everything or an incomparably tough water shield. He can sense and guide the energy flowing in the atmosphere, summoning storms, causing dark clouds to gather at unnatural speeds, and making gales and lightning obey his commands. This power is overwhelming. Even a slight attempt leaves one feeling dizzy and disoriented. Clearly, it will take many years of honing, and adapting to continuously control these eyes that can make the ocean bow down. Chapter 34. The Winter of Westeros. In Westeros, winter is not a season, but a slow and precise divine punishment that descends upon the entire civilization. Its arrival was not a sudden freeze, but a gradually tightening noose, starting from the first unmelted frost flower and ending with the last sigh swallowed by the wind and snow. For most people, winter means life is reduced to its most primitive and ugly form. They huddled in low thatched huts like cave creatures, sleeping alongside pigs, sheep, chickens, and dogs, relying on the body heat of the livestock and the meager warmth generated by fermenting manure to combat the bitter cold that could crack rocks. Their activity range was confined to the short path from their bed to the cellar. Daily rations became a cruel ritual, a bowl of thin oatmeal porridge so runny you could see the bottom, or a piece of dark bread that needed to be softened with saliva for half a day before it could be bitten. Salt was no longer a seasoning, but a sacred substance for sustaining life. It sealed the few pieces of meat and fish they had, and was the only saltiness for the long months. Under such desperate rationing, humanity is forced to make the darkest choices. The elderly, the former pillars of their families and treasure troves of wisdom, will silently, almost tacitly, voluntarily reduce their food rations, leaving the last grains of life for their grandchildren. In the North, this tradition is given a poignant yet terrifying name, the Mercy of the North, or the Last Hunt. When the firewood is nearly gone and the food bins are empty, the elder of the family will don his most tattered fur, declare that he is going out to hunt for the family, and then resolutely walk into the boundless white expanse, never to return. They exchange self-exile and death for a few more hours of warmth burning by the fireplace and a few more days of rations. In the deepest despair, whispers spread like a plague through the frozen villages. The legend of the rat chef resurfaces, no longer just a horror in a bedtime story, but a chilling, unspeakable shiver that arises when one glances at a neighbor or family member while starving. Even a stone castle is only a slightly larger refuge in the face of winter. The gates slammed shut, shutting the world out. Good lords like the Starks of Winterfell understand their covenant with the land and the people. They will set up soup kitchens, but the soup will be thinner than what commoners eat in their homes, meant only to keep them alive, not to fill their stomachs. The banquets inside the castle continued, but the dishes had changed from roasted whole pig to stewed salted meat and root vegetables, and the musicians' music could not dispel the anxiety permeating the air. The core activity of the nobles became meticulous calculations. How many days would the grain in the cellars last? How many more nights would the woodpile burn? Every distribution of food was a gamble on how quickly spring would arrive. Winter is also the season when the castle's population increases, not out of joy, but out of cold pragmatism. In the long, dark nights of idleness, procreation becomes a necessary task to continue the family and the workforce, hoping that new labor will arrive when the ice and snow melt to fill the void of life that the cold winter will inevitably take away. If Westeros is experiencing winter, then the wall is facing winter itself. This massive ice wall will become the true frontier of hell. The passageway is completely sealed off by several meters of blue ice, and the towers resemble frozen tombstones. The Night's Watch brothers huddled in the cold castle, chewing on black bread and salted meat as hard as stone as they had been centuries before. Their only drink was watered-down sour beer. Standing guard had become a punishment worse than death. The sentries had to watch over a desolate, blizzard-shrouded ghost forest in the freezing cold that could freeze off their fingers. Despair and cold were more destructive to the will than the White Walkers. Every winter, brothers in black would choose to shed their black robes and flee to the vast snowfields of the south, even though they knew it was a dead end. They were not betraying their oaths. but the unbearable, endless cold and loneliness. Roads became legends beneath the ice and snow, the narrow sea a roaring graveyard, and the pulse of trade ceased entirely. Golden dragons and silver deer lost their meaning. A small bag of salt or a bundle of firewood was worth far more than a bag of gold coins. Society regressed to a primitive state of barter. In response to the disaster, a frenzied, nature-defying plundering was waged throughout the summer and autumn. Granaries were built to their maximum capacity, overflowing with grains, beans, and barrels of salted fish. Taxes were collected almost entirely in kind. Every cellar was stuffed with pumpkins, onions, dried mushrooms, and any food that could be stored. Housewives toil like warriors, pickling mountains of cabbage and brewing mead and beer to provide brief numbness and a meager warmth. The final moments of autumn are a race against time. People rush into the fields to harvest all the unripe crops, even the smallest and most unripe ones. Forests are felled on a massive scale, not for expansion, but simply for survival. Massive stacks of firewood provide a more reassuring barrier than city walls. The most heartbreaking time is slaughter season, when livestock, cattle, sheep, and pigs that grazed leisurely on the grasslands in the summer are slaughtered in droves because they cannot survive the winter without fodder. The air is thick with the stench of blood and smoke, as their meat is transformed by salt and smoke into bacon, ham, and hard, woody salted meat, becoming the protein building blocks that sustain them through the long, harsh winter. Each long winter is a brutal harvest of Westeros' population and the foundations of its civilization, with countless lives lost to hunger, cold, and the ensuing plagues, such as the horrific winter flu. This is the cruel truth behind the cyclical fluctuations in the population of this land. In the Iron Islands, this battle for survival carries a unique, harsh flavor of sea salt. The Greyjoy family's dominance will face its most direct test this winter. The people of Tai have been skilled at using salt since ancient times. Throughout the autumn, the workshops in Salt Harbor worked day and night, shrouded in smoke. The caught fish were not sold, but gutted and piled high in salt heaps to make salted fish that could last a whole year. Seal, walrus, and even shark meat were processed in the same way. Seaweed was harvested, dried, and used as a food supplement and fuel. The ancient road became unsustainable in winter, but the role of the Ice and Fire Merchant Guild became paramount. Under Euron's planning, and with the strong support of King Coron, the Iron Islands longship fleet transformed into a trading fleet throughout the summer and autumn, frantically trading iron ore, plundered goods, during the last few raids when the weather was still favorable, and their unique sea salt with the free city of Essos and the narrow sea coast for the most crucial resources: grain, timber, furs, and medicine. The cellars and warehouses of Pike City were filled with supplies from all over the world, perhaps even more abundant than some families in Highgarden. This was another form of iron money. King Coron knew all too well that if the commoners perished, who would row the boats? Who would forge the steel? Who would fight? He might not have been as sentimental as the Starks, but he was certainly pragmatic. He would order the island lords to ensure the survival of the fishermen, to allocate food supplies prudently, and to gather the Iron Islands artisans indoors to hasten the production of weapons and the repair of ships, in preparation for possible actions in the spring and even the following summer. Idle iron is dangerous. It must be kept occupied with work. The priests of the Temple of Poseidon would be even busier, chanting ancient prayers in hoarse voices to soothe the fear of the drowning god and proclaim that sacrifice and patience were the ways to gain the favor of the water palace. The stories of the mercy of the North have a different version in the Iron Islands, perhaps about an old sailor who sails alone in a small boat into a winter storm to find the legendary warm fishing grounds for his people. Winter was equally harsh on the Iron Islands. The damp chill of the sea winds seeped into their bones, and storms severed the islands from each other. But relying on the bounty of the sea, their strict discipline, the wealth accumulated through trade, and their innate resilience to hardship, they struggled to survive this slow erosion of civilization, waiting for the moment when the ice would break, and they could redefine the rules of the world once more with iron and fire. Fortunately, Euron arrived before this harsh winter. The white gold sands he created a year earlier had accumulated vast amounts of gold and silver for the Iron Islands, now bringing hope for survival to countless people. Chapter 35. The world is so big. The prophecy of winter, like an invisible chill, penetrated the very marrow of the Iron Islands even before the salty, cold sea breezes blowing from the narrow sea. Beneath the dome of the Meister's Tower, Euron Greyjoy's gaze did not linger on the map before him marking the granaries and forests of Westeros, but instead stared intently at the massive, ancient map of Essos on the wall, its edges blurred by bookworms and dampness. Another option in the face of a harsh winter is to go to another continent. On the parchment, from the frozen, trembling sea to the dust-shrouded Valantes, from the serpentine Lorne River to the mysterious and gloomy Asshai, that vast and boundless land of the East was depicted as a jigsaw puzzle of countless city-states, deserts, oases, and grasslands. King Coron's deep voice analyzed the valley's food reserves, the predicament in the north, and the narrow sea route, which was about to become increasingly raging and unpredictable. But Euron's thoughts, carried on the sails of imagination, had already soared over that storm-ravaged sea. Euron knew that the winters of Westeros were not ordinary. The Meisters of the Citadel explained it with the celestial orbits and the cycles of the seasons, but a deeper, more unsettling belief lingered in their hearts. The seasons of this land were distorted by some vast, primordial, and incomprehensible magic. The long summer is both a blessing and a curse, foreshadowing the long, harsh winter that follows, capable of freezing souls and civilizations. It is a chronic disease rooted in the very laws of the world, tormenting Westeros alone. And what about Essos, across the narrow sea? When ice crystals clung to the battlements of Winterfell, when the fields of the Riverlands were blanketed in deep snow, when even the beggars of King's Landing huddled together in a corner, shivering.